Now that XREAL Games has finally decided to release an update for the PC version of Zero Caliber, I figure it's the right time to take a more in-depth look at the game. In case you're not aware of the Zero Caliber situation, this game had a very positive, if not an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam, and then the devs released the Quest version, which probably did way better than the PC version in terms of sales, so the devs mostly shifted their focus towards the Quest version, which caused an outrage among the PCVR community. But we're here to discuss the PCVR version of Zero Caliber more, and take a more in-depth look regardless of the current situation. Zero Caliber is by no means the best looking nor the most polished VR shooter, but it provides an experience that can rarely be found in a VR title nonetheless. The game features an actual full-length campaign that you can play with your friends, and while it's always fun to jump into some PvP games, it feels pretty good to get into some co-op action and play through the story in a variety of scripted missions with various objectives. While the story itself might be mediocre, the presentation is really what makes Zero Caliber shine. The game puts you through a large variety of situations, and each one of those was very well presented. Be it making your way through trenches in the middle of a storm, witnessing a gigantic explosion in front of you, or the sight of friendly warthogs coming in for support. All of these scenes look pretty amazing, especially when seen in VR. Such scenes make you much more immersed and make you feel like you're in the middle of an actual war zone. The pace of each mission is well balanced too, oftentimes alternating between more calm, quiet segments and intense combat, so it never feels like you're just mindlessly shooting all the time, nor does it become a walking simulator. With a good amount of scripted events and gameplay variation thrown into the mix. The game also includes a progression system where you unlock new clothing as well as weapons and attachments and customization options, which is another incentive that significantly improves the replayability of the game. There are also some hidden secrets and unlockables throughout the maps that are always a nice touch and really rewarding to find. Weapon customization is another area where Zero Caliber delivers. The devs went more in favor of freedom rather than realism, so you can go wild with your weapons, and I have to say some attachments are really impressive and work pretty well that I'm surprised I haven't seen them implemented in other VR titles. The double magazine, for example, is one of the coolest attachments I've used in VR. And while double magazines might not be very useful in games with infinite ammo like Zero Caliber, they're still pretty cool to use, and they would be very useful in other titles. Reloads are another area where Zero Caliber went for the more freedom approach. You can push a button to release a magazine, even on weapons such as the AK-47, and you can slap the magazine of an M4 using another one. The game pretty much gives you all the options and leaves you to decide how you want to reload your weapon. And of course, you can also do the good old HK stab on the MB5. Zero Caliber went for the physics-based approach with guns. That means your weapon interacts with your hands and the environment and doesn't just clip through everything. Personally, I prefer this over the ghost weapons approach since it will require more realistic movement when you're trying to maneuver around cover or peek out. You also have full body IK, so you're not just two floating hands. And you also have those magnetic gloves, so you can climb almost every surface in the game. There's a lot of similarities between Zero Caliber and Population 1 in those aspects. Although I have to say Population 1's implementation is much more polished. One thing that I was very impressed by was the visual effects in the game. They looked very excellent in VR and helped lift up the presentation significantly, even though I was playing on the lowest settings of effects. But of course, just with most games, there's always shortcomings, and Zero Caliber's shortcomings are many. Let's start by the most obvious ones. A few moments into the game, you're probably going to recognize a lot of props around the environment. That's because a large majority of assets in the game are pre-made Unreal Engine marketplace assets. This also causes a big inconsistency in level of details in the world, with some objects looking pretty decent while others not so much. This can even be observed in weapons, although most of the weapons generally feature more details than other world props. It's almost impossible to finish a mission without running into at least a few bugs, although for me none of these bugs were game breaking or made me have to restart a section of the game. The amount of jank and bugs that you're gonna be running into is a little bit disappointing for a game that has been in early access for 3 years. While I personally prefer full hands and body IK in VR, as previously mentioned, Zero Caliber's implementation is not the best and those can be very janky. The gun handling itself is starting to show its age and weapons can feel a little bit floaty compared to other VR shooters. You have two gun holsters, one on each side of your hips, and while they're pretty responsive and reliable, they don't make much sense, especially when you're trying to holster your two-handed weapons on your hips. It's pretty hard to reach, and switching from a rifle to a pistol, you're probably just gonna end up throwing your gun. Empty magazines don't have any collisions, nor do they have a specific direction when ejecting, so they just mostly clip through your gun and into the ground, which can be an annoying side. Another aging aspect is the AI of friendly and enemy units.
Good. Stand back. 3, 2, 1. Clear.
While it's not the worst I've seen, the AI behavior is pretty limited, so don't expect enemies to use grenades or make use of their own mounted LMGs that you can use yourself, which can be a little bit disappointing. It feels like a lot of features and attachments would be much more meaningful if your character had limited ammo. But since you have an unlimited amount of magazines, most of those are pretty useless. And while a lot of games follow this formula, I personally believe limited ammo and ammo management in general is an essential part, especially for a campaign game, and will push you towards having to improvise and make use of dropped weaponry from the enemies more, which will contribute to gameplay variety. The recently released update introduced a few new maps, but it wasn't the BVB update everyone was waiting for, and it does indeed look like the devs shifted their priority towards the Quest version support. So if you're planning to buy this game, I would go with low expectations for the update. Usually there's only 2 or 3 co-op online lobbies, so this is one of those games where it would be significantly more fun if you bring a few friends with you. As of right now, I have about 18 hours in Zero Caliber. And while I have finished all of the missions that are currently available, I haven't unlocked all of the weapons or attachments. And the way the game is structured, you don't really mind replaying through missions from time to time. It's not one of those games where when you finish the game, you're just not gonna feel like playing it anymore. All in all, even with all the compromises, I found myself enjoying my time in Zero Caliber, and despite all of the bugs and the jank, especially when playing with others, it felt like a more complete game than most of VR titles out there. My personal rating for this game would be a 7 out of 10. Zero Caliber has a great potential, and if it receives some polish and the bugs get worked out, it would hold its place among the classic must-have VR titles. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for today's video. If you guys want me to check out a specific game, let me know in the comments down below. And remember guys, remember, spread the word about the amazing double magazines. I want the next Valve game to have those. So go out there and spread the word. Have fun, and I'll see you in the Matrix.